Ladies and gentlemen, Kenny Red. From the Big Apple to the pineapple and everything in between, this fly is ready to make the scene. So grab a cup of chill as we sit back and go on the Vise with the FlyOlderGuy. So on the Vise, we have a size 14 dry fly hook. I'm going to load up the bobbin with some UTC 70 in red. It's a bright red. This is a bright red fly. Kind of my take on a royal wolf. I'm using more synthetic materials though than one would normally use for a royal wolf. And we're going to just tie that thread in right around the center, work it back towards the bend, and then bring it back up just behind the hook. And we'll get some moose body hair. I get a decent clump here of the hair and just trim that off. I'd say maybe 12 strands because there's going to be some broken pieces and some fluff in there. You want to pull it apart. The tips, just kind of shag both ends a little bit. Make sure you get everything out. And then work it into your stacker. Give the stacker a few taps. Line up those tips. And very carefully remove them. And then we're going to check. We're looking for about one length, one shank length there. Switch hands and a little pinch wrap to lock it in. I usually give it a few wraps back to lock down the tail and then proceed forward. And that way, hopefully, it'll secure the hair. Sometimes it's slippery. It'll flare, it'll slip around. But this time it worked out pretty well. Trim off the butt ends. And I like to cover them up, give it a little bit of a taper, and I don't go crazy with the thread. And then we're going to grab some of this poly floating yarn. I get mine from River Bay Outfitters, by the way. And we're going to tie that in. This is going to become our wing. So to start off, it's really like X wraps or cross wraps. And then I go into more of a figure eight. I'm really just trying to secure. I want to secure them and keep them separate, like a nice wing. So you'll see it's a lot of back and forth, a little bit of a figure eight, and I'm going to do a cross, and I'm going to wrestle the poly yarn fibers, and a little figure eight, and then a cross, and then it starts to look like it's, they're nicely separated after a few more crosses and turns. And I'm going to pull them up, and I'm not really posting them. I'm just giving a few wraps around at the base just to raise them up a little bit so they look like wings. A couple more crossing wraps for good measure. And then again, it's not really a post that I'm giving them, but I'm wrapping around the base just so they stand up a little bit more. 4 or 5 wraps is plenty here to kind of post them up. Take your time. Don't be afraid to grab the wing as you're posting. I slipped on a couple of them here, you'll see. It happens. Work your way back over to the other one. Tie in a post. It's looking pretty good. Got a few fibers flaring out. Oop, that flared out a little bit. But again, just take your time. You see, they're not huge posts. 5 or 6 wraps is plenty to post it up like that. Make it look like a nice tall wing. And once I'm sure they're separate, work my way back towards the base of the tail. A little housekeeping. We trim up these loose fibers. Don't want to get them trapped. That's the only reason I really take care of them, because they might get trapped and it gets annoying. Could get in the hook eye. Get it nice, cleaned up. Take a check. Those look nice, the separation, good distance. Work it back a little bit just to tie down that tail. Get myself closer to the bend before I grab the dubbing. And for the dubbing, we're going to use the synthetic bloody black dubbing. It's a mixture of like a shiny reddish dubbing and like a black synthetic beaver style dubbing. And you can probably find that at your fly shop. I got mine at the fly fishing show a couple years ago. So it lasts. It really does last. Dubbing on about an inch long noodle here. And we're just going to do the rear section. So I'll work that thread back right at the base of that tail. Start dubbing forward a little bit. And you can see there we've got a nice rear section of dubbing set up. But now we're going to tie that hackle in. Because just like with a Royal Wolf, I want a decent amount of hackle here. So I'm going to do the front and the back of hackle. Heavily hackle fly. I'm going to check the size of the hackle. We've got a nice 14 right there. And we're ready to go. And I'm going to tie it in up front, adjacent to the hook eye. You don't want to crowd the hook eye. I do get pretty close on this one. You can see the very tip of the stem, but it's not the end of the world. It didn't really crowd it. And this hackle wants to wrestle with me. It's not always cooperative when it's this long. It's great hackle, but it's a little long. So I attempt to get out of the way, and then we're going to turn the fly sideways. And we can get a nice look, actually, at the profile. And it will give you an idea of what I'm looking for here. So I grab a little more dubbing, or quite a bit more dubbing. I'm going to dub on another decent-sized noodle. It's about 1.5 inches. And the way I'm going to dub this is I'm going to leave this bottom section under the wing open for the hackle to really get in and get a decent angle on. And I'm going to dub over the top of the wing, in between the wings, and then bring that dubbing forward and start to build up a nice dubby thorax. Gonna grab a little bit more dubbing because it's not quite as big as I would want it, not as beefy, I was gonna say. So get that locked down a little bit, brush it back. You can see it's not quite as beefy, but it's got that nice buggy profile already. So I put that thread up behind the eye, and then we're going to start to wrap the hackle. And like I said, it's a heavily hackled fly here. So I make sure it's oriented the way that I want. And here we go, I think 4 turns in the back. These wings are nice. You can really manipulate them, even if you get caught on it. Like trying to get up to the front, I got caught on it. And then I did a couple up front, but I don't want to, again, be crowding up front too much. So 2 nice wraps should be enough to leave some space behind the hook eye to lock in this feather. And you know me, with thread wrapping in, I lock my materials in, a couple wraps in the back, a couple in the front, and we'll trim out the feather carefully. Don't want to get too many of the hackle fibers back there. Brush it back, looks good. Grab the whip finish tool, and we have the room to give it a nice whip finish. And we want to build up a decent thread head here. I got a little bit of thread already on there, so we'll give it 5-6 wraps. Really make sure that it is secure. And then we'll trim it out with the scissor. And then we'll get to trimming up those wings. You can see the yarn wings are a little long, but I do like to keep them kind of long. You know, we'll just go a little proud of the Hackle fibers. And you can spread them out a little bit. And they're good transparency too. They look good. Well, give the whole fly a look there. You can see that profile. It's got that classic dry fly profile. You know, reminiscent of the Catskill style. I like it. It does have those Royal Wolf vibes, you know. But it is the Kenny Red. So I hope you guys enjoyed the tie. And I'll see you on the next one. Until then, stay fly.